Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for allowing me to talk to you today. I'm pretty excited today to introduce to you the thing I've been working on for the last year or so called FROBOTS. And so, what is FROBOTS? Well, the complicated way of describing it, where you're very covering all bases, would be it's gamified e-learning strategic simulation. So it's a game, but its purpose is for education. And with a little bit of Web3 thrown in. Just because that's why we're here. So, because it's never a bad thing to start off a presentation with a quote from Steve Jobs, by the way, it's everybody should learn to program a computer, right? Because it teaches you how to think. So that's, of course, our Steve Jobs visionary. So let's quickly start off with the problem sort of domain. What were the opportunities that I saw when I wanted to start this journey on creating some practical application for Web3 NFT apps? So the first thing I saw was that being a sort of geek and gamer myself, I've seen the progression of monetization of the internet go the full circle, right? I started in the internet when it was still modems, and I saw the evolution to the ad-based model, where people are literally paying for your eyeballs on the screens. And that sort of turned the internet sort of downward. And then finally, now we have this sort of thing, which is subscription models, and as we're talking about, potentially micropayment models. But at the same time, computer gaming has also taken a negative downturn. It used to be that you paid for games. You just paid once, and you got a product, you got a game. You kept that game, you can play it for as long as you want. Nobody can take it from you, and you never had to pay again. But these days, we've moved to a more subscription model, thanks to the advent of streaming and all the stuff in the last 2 decades. And now you pay mostly just like on a monthly basis, maybe on a yearly basis. And that actually has had a negative effect on the design of games. A lot of games now focus more on elements which are anti-player, and we'll describe more what I mean about that later. And finally, the most important thing that nobody can ignore is that we are at the cusp of a large, huge societal change that's going to come with the advent of AI. And what that means is that it's going to be very, very important, more so than ever, that people know how to program, and that software development in general is going to be a very, very large factor. And we'll talk about that. So that's sort of like the domain space. And so if I were to summarize the space that FROBOTS operates in, it's pretty much a STEM education application platform with potential AI research and applications, practical AI research and applications. So let's do some charts, because we all love charts. So the pie on the left is the entire software industry. And the big gray chunk you see, which is highlighted, is games. It's about $200 billion US in 2021, right? And it's going to be a lot bigger, as research would indicate. And the orange piece on the right of the left pie is educational technology, educational applications. And if you blow that out on the little pie on the right, you'll see the tiny slice there is e-games, or e-learning games. So it's actually quite small. It's about $11 billion US in 2021. And predicted to grow to maybe about $30 billion by 2030. So FROBOTS operates in that little space, but I also believe that this is highly underrepresented, thanks to AI. It's going to be much more important that people learn people learn in general online nowadays, thanks to the pandemic age we live in. And so that's actually the industry size. And so if you think about how you learned computers, like I've learned before I say the quote, I learned how to program. Back then, there was a game called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego on Commodore 64. And I think since then, the industry of e-games hasn't really evolved that much, although it's gotten a little bit better. And that's what we want to address. Another quote, the spread of computers and the internet will put jobs into two categories in the future. People who tell computers what to do, and people who computers will tell what to do. Right? I think this was very, very prophetic. It was said by Mark Andreessen, founder of Netscape, you might remember, like the internet and web, and also of Andreessen Horowitz. So, AI and software development, right? Just a little bit of background information. The average salary now is about $114,000 US for a software developer. For context, when I graduated from university, right, the average salary of an analyst in Wall Street was about $50,000 to $60,000 US. So software development has almost turned a corner and become more important in the grand scheme of things than bankers. Having been one myself, I can sort of see that from firsthand experience. AI is now making a lot of mundane tasks of software development, it's going to be obsolete. But I'm not afraid that that's going to make software developers obsolete, because I believe that good developers, people who actually know how to design and architect software, will always be in demand. In fact, even more in demand in the years to come. Whereas the people who just copy and paste code will be made obsoleted by AI, because AI projects like Copilot, as if you are developers you might know, are making the task of just creating boilerplate code that you can start from simple. And so AI is changing things. So, but in the midst of all this change, where are the software platforms that's going to help us adapt to this new reality? Another quote: most of the good programmers out there do programming not because they expect to get paid or even, for the adulation of the public, but because it is fun to program. I think this one speaks to me very close to my heart, and it was made by Linus Torvalds, the creator of the Linux operating system kernel, which, if you're not in the tech space, pretty much single-handedly destroyed Microsoft's server business because it open-sourced everything. And we have the internet ecosystem we have today thanks to Linux. So that's very, very fitting. But how do we make it fun then? So he said, the important part is the fun element. How do we make it fun? So, drum roll, FROBOTS. We make it fun by making it a competitive game, right? So FROBOTS effectively is you create a program and you allow those programs to fight in a digital gladiator arena. Much like, if you're old enough to remember, Tron. There are programs that fought each other in the game grid in Disney's fictitious universe. That kind of was my big inspiration for FROBOTS. I said, why not, let's do this. So you write your program and you compete them against other people's programs. So what does it look like? So pretty much, you see on the board there's a bunch of FROBOTS on the game grid, and they will each basically run their programming, the brain code that everybody creates, and they will blast each other to smithereens. It's non-interactive, so the only thing you can do to affect the game is improve your programs, your FROBOTS programming, your FROBOTS brain code. So this is still player versus player, and this is still, we're very much in early days of our development, but this core concept of competitive coding is where I wanted to go with FROBOTS. So now, just competing these FROBOTS against each other is interesting, but we wanted to address a layer even above this, which we'll talk about after this slide. So quickly though, how do you write your FROBOT? We wanted to make it very accessible to people who are obviously learning computer science. So the idea is you should be programming your FROBOT in Blockly, which is for those of you who have kids and know MIT Scratch and also Lego blocks. The ability to write code by assembling blocks is very handy and very commonly used in game space. The FROBOTS themselves are actually programmed in Lua script, which is very widely used in gaming industry. If you've heard of a game called Roblox, it's about a game that, if you have kids, once again, you know what I'm talking about. It's about 150 million user accounts, and it's basically a platform where people can create their own games within the Roblox environment, and all of that programming for the games is done in Lua. So that was a conscious choice so that people would program their FROBOTS in Lua. And Lua is a very easy language to learn. It's very language agnostic. It's very understandable for people outside of computer science. So, last quote. Coding is not, in fact, about a particular language, right? Or even about writing programs per se. It's about cultivating a mindset of computational thinking, enhancing your ability to break down complex problems into manageable components, devising logical solutions, and thinking critically. And I think this was a very good quote, albeit a long one, and it was given by Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize competition, which gives out $1 million prizes for innovators yearly. And this was in a blog post that he created, which the link is there. I highly recommend you check out that post if you're afraid that AI is going to take over your jobs. And basically, spoiler alert, it won't. So now let's address some of those negative sides of how game monetization has evolved over the last decade. As I mentioned, games have become anti-player, right? If you're a gamer or you have a child who's a gamer, you know that nowadays it's more about buying your way to win, right? The pay to win. The more money you commit, the more gems you buy, then you get better in the game. So the games have become direct monetization through the use of microtransactions. It has started with vanity items that you would buy in the game, like just different skins, different clothes, purely vanity, no game effects, no game design effects. But now more and more, the game designers are trying to exploit your children to get them to pay more. And that's a problem, but that's not really their fault. That's the setup of the system. So the picture up there is funny because that's sort of like a dig at Roblox. It's almost like you have to actually pay to even walk around in the universe before you can actually do anything, right? So if you don't put some money up front, then you can't even play, so you're at a disadvantage. The good news is that of recent years, this trend to buy these loot boxes or these power packs is actually trending down. So either people are catching on to this little scheme, or people are just sick of having something that you would effectively pay $100 a year for a game which you're going to basically use very rarely. So that's a problem. So how are we going to address this problem in FROBOTS? Well, so the focus of FROBOTS then, to address this gamification model, which is different from pay to win, right, is basically I want to, first and foremost, players are going to, these are the things that players will do within FROBOTS. They're going to develop and improve their FROBOTS, their brain code, so that they win more competitions, win more tournaments. Also, though, we want to allow the ability for people to build upgrades, build your own upgrade items that will be in the game universe. And then, obviously, that will create somewhat of an economy within the game, which will effectively require some sort of in-game currency or credit system, which is, as you can imagine, where the lead up to NFTs will eventually end up. So the focus of FROBOTS is not pay to win, or not even play to earn, which you may have heard about if you come from, well, if you have an internet computer and you look up any NFT game, the thing that everybody will say, it's play to earn, which is supposed to be the miracle solution to get third world country folks to play a very meaningless, boring, soul-drenching game in order to earn a couple of US dollars a day. Now, that way may well be more than they could earn otherwise, but that's, I believe, is a wrong model. Why not focus on play to learn? Right? So you're going to play a game because it's fun, and you're going to learn something, and those who you are pretty astute, you'll notice that there is an earn within learn, if you look closely enough. So FROBOTS will effectively have 3 levels of game engagement. Right? The first, beginners who join FROBOTS will focus mostly on learning how to program their FROBOT, competing their FROBOTs in tournaments with others, and improving their FROBOTs to win more, right? It's more for fame, for credits, etc. As they evolve, then they'll start getting better at this. They may start to then engage in the economy above and beyond just competing FROBOTs. They may start to forge their own items, right? Their own items which they can then help others sell to other players so they can improve their FROBOTs capabilities, and also help other people upgrade their FROBOTs, because FROBOTs is just code. You can get somebody to help you improve the code. If somebody can do a better job at making your FROBOT win more in the arena, then perhaps you can pay them credits to do so. And finally, the expert level of engagement would be what I like to think of as like the manager of a football team, right? You would then be buying FROBOTs that you think are undervalued, get people to improve them, and then see if they perform better. If they perform better in the tournaments, in the arena, then their value goes up, then you can sell them, right? So it becomes more of like how a manager of a sumo stable or boxers, right? You would just basically run a gym, a boxing gym or something like that. And at that level, you're more of like a high-level trader. And so to facilitate all of this, of course, we're going to need, once again, some sort of credit system in the game. And that's what we come to Web3. So Web3, is it just a buzzword? Generally, if you ask me that question, I would say yes, most of the time it's just a buzzword. But I hope that our interpretation of Web3 will be one of those rare cases where it's not just a buzzword. So what is Web3? Simply put, I believe Web3 is the conversion of data to an asset. What do I mean by this? First of all, let's start with what Web 1 was, well, or just web. What was the web? It was www. That was it, browsers. Before the browsers, there was no web, it was just internet, all right? So with the advent of browsers, then came Web 2. What was Web 2? User-generated content. What does that mean? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, right? If you create content on somebody else's platform, that's Web 2. And that was revolutionary. I saw the whole thing happen, right? And the movement to people using platforms and writing blogs and posting videos on these platforms was revolutionary. That was Web 2. But there's a problem with Web 2, well, or opportunity to get better. The platform owns your stuff. So that's what Web 3 is about. Web 3 is user-generated content, but no platform owns your content. You created it, you own it. It's your content, you are the creators. People are starting to realize that content that you create is valuable. Well, clearly it's valuable because look at Facebook's valuation. You gave them that valuation by posting stuff on Facebook. I shouldn't really be saying too many negative things about Facebook since this is published on the internet. Sorry, YouTube and Facebook. Don't cancel me. So this data of ownership, this idea of data ownership, the best way of thinking about it is this. As I mentioned, when you post something on Medium and you're the author, who owns that blog? Who owns the content? Well, presumably you, right? And maybe if you have a copy of it, you still own the rights and you can publish it somewhere else and Medium can't do anything about that. But think about it. What about all of the meta comments? These are public comments people put on your article. People might say like, this is a good idea, oh, check out this link. You can put private notes on this content. Who owns all this extra information, this composite data that is added to what you originally published? Well, I didn't actually check Medium's terms and conditions, but my bet is that Medium owns that. And if you took your content out, or if you can even take your content out, probably not, you have no rights to whatever was added to that. So how could you do something like a collective storytelling? If somebody were to post something, another author would add to it. This was the original dream of the internet. For those of you who weren't technical, but that was the original dream of the internet. People would be able to collectively create things and collectively author things. But that's impossible if you're doing it on someone's platform, and then who owns the collective rights to the collective work, right? That's, I believe, is where NFTs can solve this problem, right? Because NFTs is the ability to wrap all of that collective content up into something which then can have ownership rights applied to it. So that's why data, which has no ownership dimension to it, becomes an asset. Because asset is something you can legally own. Somebody can legally own it. Entity can legally own. So how does NFTs do this? Well, first and foremost, this is a little bit of the standard technical pitch of NFTs, but just to review, NFTs impose digital scarcity. It makes it so that you can't just copy that data and get away with it, because copying the data means you have stolen some property, some asset now. So it enforces or restricts the copying of data, effectively making it scarce, a scarce quantity. Which allows for data ownership, because now it's an asset. It can't be willy-nilly copied or copied willy-nilly. And therefore, it allows for user-generated content. And that's kind of like what you want in games, right? So when people talk about NFTs in games, that's what you want. You want the ability for players to own things, to players to exchange things, but importantly, for players to interconnect using these assets interconnect between different game platforms, right? Not silly monkey pics that people trade speculatively. That's not really NFTs. That's just the buzzword NFT. But true NFTs facilitate those three main objectives, which effectively allows for, I suppose, positive microtransactions. But there is a missing link. There is a missing link. And in exploring FROBOTS and building this, I realized that there is a part of the ecosystem that's not there. And that missing link is such. There's kind of like implied that there needs to be some sort of layer that would adapt these NFTs between games. Right? Everybody's seen the movie Ready Player One, right? What was it called? The Oasis, right? Well, if that was really going to become a reality, how do you think these items in the Oasis transfer between games? You jump from a golf game to like a racing game. How does that happen? Well, in the movie, it happens because Oasis is that middle layer. Everything is effectively owned by Oasis. You just write games on the Oasis, which is the Roblox model. That's true. But let's see if we can do something better. The problem is you need these different platforms, games, to be able to communicate to other games and control the NFTs between games in a permissioned way, right? One game should say, this other game can use my NFTs for this and this only. Another game will be like, well, you can use these NFTs in your game, but not those, right? So there needs to be some sort of coordination layer. There needs to have a wallet compatibility. So no matter what wallet you're holding your NFTs on, you should be able to go to any game which supports it. And finally, at the game level, game developer level, you don't care about the tokenization protocol. That is so low level. That is like caring what is the version of database you run in your business application. You really don't care. That's for the technology team to work out. So you need something to abstract that away. And if you guys haven't checked it out, the guys upstairs at Asset Layer are addressing exactly this point, this missing link. This is not a paid promotion by them by any chance, but we are looking to use them just for these reasons. And if you are in game NFT development, for everybody out there on the internet as well, I suggest you take a look, because the stuff that they have thought about, which was all the problems that I eventually came to realize were there, and these folks have already thought about it and how potentially to solve it. So check that out. So in conclusion, FROBOTS is about building a learning economy versus just a product, or even a platform, because right? We want to build an entire learning economy, right? We want to create a game which is fun, right? While it engages people to actually learn a super, super important skill that you're going to need in the next generation, in the decades to come, which is computer science and critical thinking. We want to make it different ways sorry, I skipped the slider. We want to give different ways for people to engage in the game, right? So there's different levels. Very much like a real economy. You start off doing as an individual contributor, you become an expert middle layer, and then you become like the upper echelon of society. After having accrued enough credits, you can start building your little empires within the game economy. Finally, through all of this, the focus is to keep the ownership of data in the hands of the players, right? Because the data is where the intrinsic value is. And if people are going to engage in anything that looks like the Oasis in the future, the most important thing is that if you create data and it's valuable, then it should basically remain with the creator. So in summary, I suppose, we're focusing on building a fair ecosystem, right, and an environment where people can challenge each other. So that's all I have for you today. FROBOTS is preparing to go public beta, and so if you check out the website up there or join the Discord, I'd be happy to give you more information. And if you're interested, please come and find me at the talk in the conference later on. So thank you very much for your attention today.